Thanks for tuning into another episode of the Impact Podcast. I am your host, LBJ, and today I'm super excited to interview Brittney Perry, founder and CEO of PerryCo Shoes. Brittney is a Ball State alum. She's been featured in Elle, Cosmopolitan, Marie Claire, GQ. Was even featured in Insecure on HBO. I'm going to ask you about that in a little bit because I want to hear that story. But Brittney, to formally introduce yourself, I'd love if you want to tell us a bit about PerryCo Shoes. What is PerryCo Shoes? And then I'll go from there.
Okay, cool. No, I appreciate you having me on. So I started PerryCo Shoes back in 2018. So like I told you earlier off camera, I'm originally from Indiana. So I grew up playing basketball as a tomboy. And so I was always into sneakers ever since I was a kid. But whenever I would go shopping for shoes, I would always wear men's sneakers because I just like them more. And they have more options. I love the colorways. I love Jordans. And obviously, you go to the women's side and they really didn't have a ton of options. So I don't really think I thought that way about it because I was just so young to realize, why is that?
Yeah.
It wasn't until I graduated from college that I was like, well, I'm seeing the disparities that, there's not really a lot of options for women's sneakers. And then you look at the corporations behind who's putting out the women's sneakers. They didn't really have women behind the scenes making the shoes or having any say in making the decisions for women's apparel and footwear. So knowing that, when I went to school for marketing, I didn't go to school for fashion. And when I was working my corporate job, I couldn't wear like my usual shoes. So I was like, I need some shoes I could wear to work. But if I go to happy hour, especially in Chicago, you go from work to happy hour, going to Cerez Cafe, and so I was like, I need something I could be comfortable, but still feel good, look good. So that's why I came up with the idea to make my own shoe company. And from those disparities, growing up, seeing the lack of options for women, I made the brand unisex so that everybody could, wear the shoes and not feel excluded. So that is basically the overview of how PerryCo came to be and why I started it. Mm-hmm.
All right, I have a lot of questions about that. But I want to hear a little bit. You mentioned you grew up you said Indianapolis, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Indiana, yep.
That's so Indianapolis is one of my favorite cities in the country.
I've never heard this.
So I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. So it's also kind of smaller. So when I went to Indianapolis for the first time, I was like, this pace is it fits me. It fits me perfect. And also on the side there's an amazing soul food restaurant there. I can't remember what it's called. I don't know if it's Mother's Soul Food or something like that. I don't know. But I went there, loved it, and I was like, every time I'm back, I'm stopping there. But growing up, what was that like? You mentioned you were a hooper. I want to hear a bit about your story growing up.
No, I had an older brother my brother is an 8-year age gap between us.
Okay,
So I was kind of like a loner, but I would always want to tag along with my brother. And he collected Jordans. He played basketball. He ran track. So I would just, always just want to do what he's doing, kind of. And so literally from a young age, I just started playing basketball. Plus I'm tall too. So I'm 5'9". So that's taller, for a woman. So I just always loved basketball and sports. And what shoes was I wearing? I wore a lot of basketball sneakers. So I wore AIs, like the question.
Okay, yeah.
So those were my go-to. I think I wore some T-Max at one point.
What position
Carmelo.
did you play?
I was a forward. At first, well, when I was younger, I was a guard because I was a little shorter, and then I had a growth spurt. And then when I had my growth spurt, they turned me into a forward, which sucked because one of my favorite players obviously was Reggie Miller, being from Indiana. So I love shooting jumpers, but I really like Dirk Nowitzki because he was tall, but he shot jumpers, and I was like, this is me. He's tall, but he's not in the post, and I feel like you were just so they just had you in a box if you're tall, like just stay in the post. And I was like, dang, I just missed that era. Like if I was born a little later, I could have been shooting. So I quit. I quit playing because I kind of lost passion for it because I couldn't do what I wanted to do. Like I couldn't do what I thought was my best, assets of being a player, which was shooting. I just kind of lost the passion for it. But yeah.
Yeah, my dad was a hooper. He tried to give me the skill. One summer he built I said makeshift hoop like on the side of our fence in our backyard. And when I tell you I couldn't hit a layup to save my life.
Oh,
one day
so
came up, he's like, yeah, that's exactly why I played football. He's like, I don't think this is for you. I was like, I think you're right. Okay, that's awesome. Did you ever do anything like entrepreneurial as a kid? Like, did you ever have like the inkling that you might one day be an entrepreneur?
As a kid, I grew up on like a golf course. So I would go, obviously people would hit the golf balls and they would go into the weeds and stuff like that. So I would take the golf balls from like the weeds and clean them off at the station, like where you can clean the golf balls and resell them to the people.
That's awesome.
And when you're a kid, they're like, oh, that's so cute. Like, so I was doing numbers as a kid, but I don't think, because there in Indianapolis, there really wasn't any entrepreneurs. Like I didn't know any personally. We didn't have any sneaker boutiques. Like we just had Foot Locker, Finish Line. There was like no, like I moved to Chicago and that was all new to me, but we didn't have any of that. So I didn't really think, that stuff was possible unless you lived in a larger city.
Yeah.
But I always knew like in high school, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a producer. And I wanted to be like a producer / DJ, and I wanted to be in like computers and IT. So I've actually done all of that.
Oh, that's incredible.
So I think at a young age, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. But I knew I wanted to be a business person because even through high school, I got involved in a lot of business organizations.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know like what it was. I thought I wanted to do marketing and something, but I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur because I don't like being told what to do. And like, I mean, I can do it, but I just like to kind of do my own thing,
I understand entirely. So, as you were, you've had these entrepreneurial thoughts and endeavors kind of early on. What was your family's mindset? Were they like fully in support of entrepreneurship? Or they like, girl, go get a job? Like,
no, I mean, I had a job, so I had my full-time job and I was doing it on the side. I just think a lot of people that I told, they were supportive. It wasn't like, what are you doing? But I think they were surprised because I don't think they've ever heard of somebody like starting a company from scratch, like a shoe company from scratch, especially like a lot of my family is living paycheck to paycheck too. So it's not like we had the income to just go out and start a business. So I think they're just like, okay, well, how are you gonna pay for all this? And I was like, that's a good question. but I just knew like that was what I wanted to do. And so I just set out the journey to figure out how to do it, and I did. So I just figured, for me, if I have my mindset on something, like I'll figure it out some way or the other. Like
that's awesome.
So, but they've always been supportive. It's just I don't think they really knew how to support. They just were like, okay, whatever you do, we'll support you. They don't really say don't do that. Like they aren't those types of people. For sure.
Right. So you went to Ball State. Tell me a bit about how you ended up at Ball State. And then I would say, how that transition from Ball State through the ideation of PerryCo.
I started college. I went to Prairie View A&M. So I went there for my first year of college, and I had a lot of fun. I had too much fun probably. And I was like, you know what? I don't think if I stayed here, I don't know if I would like really. I don't know if I would do what I was supposed to be doing. So it is also very expensive too, paying the out-of-state tuition.
Yeah.
I think because my siblings didn't go to college and my dad didn't go to college. I think my mom was the only one to go to college. So they didn't really have any say. Like, oh, they're just kind of like, you can do what you want to do. And I was
How'd you
just so
pick
determined
Prairie
to
View?
get out of. Yeah, I was just so determined to get out of Indiana that I was like, I looked at where some of my friends were going. That I didn't even do research on like the business school or anything. I was just like, oh, okay, they have a marketing, major. I'm gone, and I just
Yeah.
and it just was. But it was good. It was like kind of culture shock going down
Yeah.
there because it was just so different from Indiana, and it was hot, and but I had a lot
Absolutely.
of fun. I After that year, I was like, okay, it's expensive. I'm kind of not focusing how I should. If I'm looking a few years down the line from now, I think the best decision for me is to go back home. So I applied to Indiana University and Ball
Yeah.
State, and I got in both, but I had more friends at Ball State, and I thought that the transition from going from HBCU to Ball State would be better because IU's huge. Like, it's too many people.
Yeah.
Even though it's a great school, I was like, let me just go to Ball State, and
Yeah.
so I went there, and it was good. It was definitely still a hard transition, just going from an HBCU to going to being the only black person, being the only
Yeah.
black person in your class, like one or two other black people. It was tough for sure,
Yeah.
but I think overall it was a good decision. I think.
That's awesome. So after Ball State, what was that first job out of college?
I was like, I want to leave Indiana again because I always wanted to leave Indiana. I'm not gonna, no shade, but I knew that I wasn't supposed to be there, right?
So when I
That's
said Indianapolis, one of my favorite cities, you were like, he's tripping.
I was shocked. No, honestly, I've never heard anybody say that. That wasn't from there, or maybe they were from like a smaller town, like Fort Wayne or something, and they're like, oh yeah, like I love it here.
Yeah.
But I like Indiana. Like I love Indiana. That's my hometown. Like,
Yeah.
and it's changed a lot since then. It's been a long time since I've actually lived there, but it's a lot of growth.
Yeah.
And they're starting to create like their own creative community there,
Mhm.
which I think was lacking. So I'll always, have love for the hometown. So I ain't gonna shade on like that, but no, I'm trying to think now. Wait.
After college, was that
Oh
first
yeah. So I
job?
was
Yeah.
like, I want to get out of here. So I only applied to jobs in Chicago and California because those were the two places I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And because I always knew from like an early age that I wanted to be in California. I don't know why. It's just I just wanted to. So I was applying, but all the jobs that I was getting offers for weren't paying enough. It'd be like
Yeah.
25, 30K. I'm like, how am I going to survive in these larger cities getting paid
Yeah.
So
What year is this, by the way?
2013.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was like, I still want to leave Indiana. So I looked for other jobs. There was a job on my college career board for Allstate.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, we'll move you to Florida for a year. Like, we'll pay for everything. I was like, oh, okay. Like, let me apply. And as soon as I applied, I heard back from them like within a week. And then in 2 weeks, I got hired. And then I moved to Florida. So
That's
that was
awesome.
my first job at Allstate.
And what city in Florida were you in?
Jacksonville.
Okay, so you go to Jacksonville after college. You just graduated Ball State. What was Jacksonville like? And then how'd you end up in Chicago from Jacksonville?
Jacksonville was interesting. I thought it would be different. Like I thought, oh, it's Florida, like it's probably popping, but I don't know. The downtown was super dead. Like it was terrible. Obviously, the Jaguars sucked at that time.
Yeah.
I lived near the beach, so that was cool.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really diverse either. Like I think it was very segregated, and I think that was probably like the introduction of being outside of the Midwest is like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of places that have more opportunities and diversity, but it's segregated. Like,
Yeah.
so that was new. And then I was doing a lot of traveling too for my job, so I didn't get to experience a lot of stuff.
Right.
but I enjoyed it. I think it was definitely a change of pace. I enjoyed it being warm all the time, being by the beach, and I had a good time. I'm blessed that I was able to like experience different cultures.
Yeah.
Being like, because being born and raised in the Midwest, like being there my whole life, I didn't know anything else besides
Yep.
when I left for Texas, and then when I went there. So I liked it. It was cool.
Yeah. Okay. So how'd you transition to Chicago after leaving Jacksonville?
So the intent with that job was not for me to stay in Jacksonville. So the program was you get trained in everything, insurance and everything,
Yeah.
um, to basically prepare you to be moved to an open territory to manage.
Okay.
So they were like, you don't really have say in where you go. It's just wherever we have a need, that's where we're going to send you. But we kind of had a say. And obviously, I obviously wanted to go to either Chicago or
Yep.
California. And but the California person, I guess they just had so much turnover there that my boss was like, no, if you go there, like you probably wouldn't last because it's too hard, it's too much. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So someone happened to quit in Chicago, like right before I finished the program. And then I ended up taking that spot. So then I moved to Chicago in
That's awesome.
2014. So I was like, dang, that was like meant to be, right?
That's awesome. So you're in Chicago, you're working at Allstate. The first, like, what was that first indication of, I think I'm gonna start my shoe company?
I already had inklings of wanting to start a shoe company
Yeah.
while I was in college. Like I had the
Oh,
idea,
way back then. Yeah.
but I just didn't go through it because, like I said, I went to school for marketing, and I was like
Yep.
almost done with school. This was like the early stages of Instagram,
Okay. Yeah.
so I was starting to see more independent sneakers that were not in US, they're in like Europe. So I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
like this is exactly what I was trying to do. And I saw a lot of the shoes were priced for like $400, and it was like super plain. I was like, if they can do it, like I know I could drop some heat.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had the intentions on doing it, but I just didn't know how, because like
Yeah.
especially at that point, this was like 2015, 2016. Like people weren't making shoes like they are now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so I was in there early, like y'all my sons.
So how'd you get
But
started from there? Like
um
what was your first step?
so the first step was just figuring out what kind of shoe I wanted to make. So knowing
Yeah.
that I was in corporate, I was like, okay, I want to make a shoe that I can kind of dress up, dress down. But I was like, how do I do this? So I set out on the journey to find someone via Instagram. So I
Okay.
just hashtagging, designer, footwear designer, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And just finding people that were in the industry, whether
Yeah.
they were like designers or if they worked at footwear boutiques or whatever. I just needed to talk to somebody
Yeah.
just for advice. So I was just sending people DMs and whatever. Most people didn't read the DMs. A few people did respond, and they like gave me their consulting rates. So I couldn't afford that at the time. And then I did talk to one or two people for free, and they were like, not to discourage you, but it's gonna cost you like a couple $1,000,000 to like just start the thing or whatever. I was like, okay. And then I was like, okay, he said that, but like I still feel like I could do it, so I'm gonna keep looking. So then I came across another designer named Quentin.
Yeah.
And he was living in Atlanta at the time, I believe, and he was Black, and I saw that he had designed his own footwear brand from scratch. Like he designed sneakers, he designed flip-flops, all kinds of shoes, and I was like, I've never seen like a Black man make his own, shoes. So I sent him a message, and I was like, hey, like I've been trying to, start my own brand, but no one's helping me out. Can I have a call with you? Can you help me out? He was like, oh yeah, like whatever you need.
Incredible.
I was like, see. So
yeah,
I was
that's incredible.
so if it wasn't for Quentin helping me with the design process and figuring out all that stuff, then I wouldn't be where I'm at.
Yes. So I'd love for you to kind of walk me through it at a high level, kind of, what that design process is. I don't have the slightest understanding of what it takes to design a shoe and get a shoe to market. What's that kind of?
You want
what's
the
that
whole process, or just the process of making the shoe, or just everything? You want all?
I'll let you decide how much you want to share.
Well, for me, the first steps were just figuring out, okay, what type of shoe you want to make. So I did that, and then I needed to make a mood board for how I wanted it to look. Like what inspired me, you know. And for me, when I design anything, even now, I always kind of resort back to the shoes that I wore as a kid. Like what did I enjoy wearing? What were people wearing at that point? What did I think was cool that maybe I couldn't afford, or and I kind of combine that with newer elements of what's on trend now. Or just finding different ways to introduce something, right? But just in my own way. And for my way, that's a little more minimal. Like I call my type of style street prep, because I'm like, it's like
I see that in the design. I love that.
Because it's like you can kind of wear it with anything. You can kind of dress it up, you can kind of dress it down. It's like, because the era that I grew up in, it was like Kanye, when Kanye was wearing the 2 polos.
Yep.
So you wear like your preppy stuff, your Ralph Lauren, and then your sneakers are like, Dunks and stuff like that. So that's kind of like my style.
That's awesome. So
but
go ahead.
Going back to the design process. So I made the mood board. I had different sketches, rough sketches too. But I commissioned Quentin to do some more sketches, but I basically told him these are the shoes that inspire me and kind of like the look that I'm going for. And at that point, there's a lot of like running shoes, like Roche runs and stuff like that, which I didn't wear those really. So some of those,
I must admit, I had a couple pair.
No, everybody had a pair. Everybody had the pair, but I was like, no, these are for me. And and so we did a few different designs, and there were some designs that were a little more technical, but I was like, since this is my first one, I want to do something a little more safe. And for me, I wanted it to be more minimal so that it could last a longer time. So like if I'm thinking of like shoes that don't have too much going on, I'm thinking of like an Air Force One, where it's been around forever. And it doesn't go out of style because it's not that much going on with the shoes. I was like, I need to do something like that, where I know like 10 years from now you can still wear it and it looks good. So that's kind of what went into me picking that type of sneaker.
That's awesome.
And then the next part of that is basically making a 3D graphic of the sneaker, so you can see all of the different angles and sides of the shoe. And then you have to create a tech pack, which is basically what you send to the factory of how you want them to make your shoes. So that includes like the materials, the stitching, the colors, all of that. And that was very difficult because.
Did you have to learn like 3D design yourself to do that, or?
Yeah, he did the 3D lateral on Illustrator, which I did have to learn. But for the first one, like I couldn't. I was like, I can't. So yeah, I did learn that, and I use usually Illustrator or Procreate to do that. But once you do the tech pack, then you send that to the factory. So factory in China or Europe. But I wasn't really thinking at the time of, I don't know, I was just thinking of how it looks. I was like, oh, I want it to look like this. I didn't think about anything else. And when I got the first sample back, I was like, man, this is ugly. It was ugly. But they're like, no, that's normal. Like usually the first sample is like really bad. But you just have to be really specific on what you want. So that way the next one is close to what you want and you're not spending so much money going back and forth. But then I also didn't think of like who was wearing the shoes. I was like just thinking for me, right? And I wasn't thinking about I didn't think about the type of leather that I was using and how that affects the stitching. I didn't think about the types of people wearing it, if they're walking a lot, if it's raining, if it's snowing, will this affect the leather? it was just a lot of things. I was like, man, I didn't think about all of these different elements. I was just thinking about how I wanted it to look. So now I kind of had to start over. So it was a long process. It took
Yeah.
me it took me 2.5 years
Wow.
to do that, because I was still working my full-time job and
Yeah.
saving the money that I had left over to, pay for the samples and all that. So
Wow.
it took me a while.
Wow. That's incredible. So, once you had the first sample you were proud of, you're like, I'm ready to give this to a customer. How did you go to market? How did you get your product in front of customers?
It was funny because when I was designing the shoe, there were still parts of it. Like I tell you, I'm still doing like going through the sample process, and I didn't think the shoe was ready. And I was
Yeah.
like, I still need to do some stuff, like, because it's not turned out how I wanted it. And I think I asked a few people, like I asked one of my best friends, I was like, what do you think about this? And he was like, it looks
Yeah.
like a grandpa shoe. And I was like, dang, like. So then I started doubting, like, I don't even know if people will really like this, this when the doubts
Yeah.
start coming in. And then and I didn't have it on social media or anything. So a friend of mine was like, you need to start your Instagram page and like just start posting on there so people can follow your journey. But I didn't want to, because I was like, I don't want people to like steal my designs and stuff like that. And she's like, no, like, I mean, that's just what comes with it. I was like, you're right, like, you have a point.
Yeah.
So I posted on Instagram in 2016 or 2017, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was just posting like the logo and like leathers and stuff like that. Not necessarily the shoes. Then I started posting the shoes, and I started. There's a designer in Chicago named Sheila Rashid. I don't know if you know her.
Yeah. Yep.
And I went on her page and I was like the stuff, because this was the time when she had just made those overalls for Chance.
Yeah.
So she was like kind of like moving
Yep.
up, And I was like, oh, she's dope. So then she went back on the page and she was like, oh, these are dope. I need a pair. And I was like,
Wow.
you need a pair?
Wow.
Oh, okay. I was like, okay. So that was like, when was that? Maybe May or June-ish of 2016. And then she DM'd me a couple months after that. And she was like, hey, I'm having a fashion show. Can you provide the sneakers for the models? And I was like,
were you already selling at this point or no?
No.
Wow. That's amazing.
I just had the page and I had the shoes, but they weren't complete. I had it, but it was not done. I just had started the page because I was trying to build up. And I was like, I'll do it. I was like, you don't have to give me any money or nothing. I'll just do it. And so I called the factory. I was like, hey, I need this many pairs of shoes in like 3 weeks. And they're like, okay.
That's incredible.
So I got the shoes made, got them in time for the show. And then people were like, oh, like the shoes are dope. Who made these? Like, where are these? And they were like, she made them. And they're like, you made these from scratch? And I was like, yeah. So, but I didn't have a website or anything at that point. I was just like,
wow,
there. But then people were like, oh, like, we want to buy them. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, oh, I might have something here. So like a month after that, I made my website. And then I officially launched in 2018. So I launched the website and everything. And then
that's awesome.
So white was the first colorway, and then I did the black and pink and other ones. So if it wasn't for Sheila, who knows? Like, she kind of helped push me, because I was at that point where I was like, it's not right. And that doubt where people were like, these are ugly. So I'm like, man. So I feel like everything kind of aligned at the right time, right? And
that's incredible.
I've just been going ever since then.
Wow. So when you built the website out, were you selling them directly to customers, like via your website, like as e-commerce, or were you trying to get into I guess Chicago vendors, or what was that?
No, I didn't even think, because again, I was just going a lot. Like I was just going, I didn't know what to do, but I didn't have like the mentality of wanting to be in stores. I was just like, oh, I just want to like, have but people were buying this. So I was at that point, people were just giving me cash and stuff. And then I'm like, okay, I need to be like legit. You have to go to the website and buy the shoes. And so So I was doing that, and then I got cool with the people at Leaders. So Leaders is definitely my favorite store
Yeah.
in Chicago, and they carried them at Leaders. And I don't think it was until after that where I did a program with Macy's, and I pitched
That's
the
awesome.
Macy's buying team. So they're available on Macy's.com. So I was like, okay. So I should probably get into some more, some more stores now. So that's what I'm working on still now, is expanding
awesome.
and getting into more retailers and boutiques in LA and in New York. And probably like one more large retailer for right now. Yeah.
That is super cool. So your shoes were featured on Insecure. How did that come about? Like what? That's amazing.
No, it was random because I was at home and I heard the little cha-ching. So that's like the Shopify sound that somebody had made an order. And I was like, this is a large order. Like, okay, we up. And then
that's awesome.
The stylist sent me an email and she was like, hey, this is the stylist for Insecure. I just ordered all these shoes because we're shooting season 5 next weekend. Can you rush ship? I was like, girl, that so I rush shipped, like I went there, shipped everything like overnight. So that they would have them for like the fitting for the weekend to try on the outfits and everything. So they didn't really give me a lot of information on if they would even be on, if they would actually wear them or what episode. So I just pretty much had to watch every episode.
That's awesome.
And it happened to be the episode that they aired on. Nathan was wearing the shoes.
Yeah.
And every outfit on that episode was created or designed by a Black woman. And I was like, dang, amazing. This is dope.
That is amazing.
It was just super dope and just random because I didn't, plan on doing product placement, but that was just like to be on that show with Issa.
Yeah.
And that just, just how Insecure was just so for the culture at that time. Like it was no other shows like that. And it was just, super dope to be included in that capacity with all those other women designers too. So I thought that was so cool. Yeah.
That's super cool. I think that's a good transition to my next question as well. As you mentioned earlier, the shoe industry is super male dominated, super white male dominated.
Right.
As a female founder and a female founder of color, what advice do you have for the young Black girl, wanting to jump into those male dominated industries?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it has gotten better, but we still have obviously a long way to go. Like, I feel like we were at this pivotal point during 2020 where businesses were noting the disparities. Like, oh, you're right. Like, but the fact that it took them something of that capacity to even start to even consider or make the changes, that was probably one of the reasons why I was like, that's why I wanted my own brand, because I wanted to give other people that look like me the opportunities, to be a designer and not have to work their way up or be heard, and to actually see someone that has ownership, right? I think that's one thing that's lacking in the Black community is ownership. I think a lot of people see people getting their shoes with these other brands, and these brands are kind of using them in a way. Like, these brands wouldn't stay afloat. Like, literally Air just came out, and if it wasn't for Michael Jordan, where would Nike be without Michael Jordan, a Black man? So it's like for decades we have been the pinnacle of the footwear industry, but yet we're lacking the ownership. So I always, even without sneakers, like, women are usually the minority, especially a Black woman. So I always say, if you have an idea, because as you can see, I had an idea. And most people probably think like it's far-fetched. Like, I don't know. I have no idea how I'm gonna do this. But if you literally have an idea and you truly believe in that, just start. Because I think a lot of people just sit on their ideas because they don't know where to start, or they kind of have the self-doubt. Really, you just have to start, whether they, reach out to somebody and get help. There's free resources as well. One of the resources that I used when I was starting up, because again, I didn't really have anybody that could ask these questions. I don't know anybody that had a footwear brand.
Yeah.
I use the small business, the SBDC, so the
Okay.
Small
Yeah.
Business Development Council. They have a lot of free resources to help you, write your business plan, marketing, all of
Wow.
that. I also use score.org. So
Score.
scores,
Score.
SCORE.org.
Okay. Yeah.
So these are actually retired entrepreneurs that basically are mentors to people
Wow.
that want to start their own businesses. So I use that too.
Yeah.
And they help me like write my business plan and all of that, because I really honestly had no clue. So there's always resources for what
Yeah.
you think you can do. And just know that you don't have to be able to do every single thing. Like whatever your strengths are, realize your strengths and then try to build a team or just find people that can help
Yeah.
you complete the things that you're not the best at. But you shouldn't let any of that deter you from starting or, basically starting your dream or your dream
Yeah.
job. And don't let these men deter, don't let these men play you, because not every man, even though it is a male dominated. There are some allies, like I said, Quentin was my ally,
Yeah.
and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. So
Yeah.
there are some good people out there that will lend a hand and see the opportunities and the talent that women, can provide and have. So just put yourself out there so that you can be found, and you will prosper if you stay true to yourself.
That's awesome. I love that I love everything that you said. Especially like I think your story is super cool, because I think a lot of people, when they think of starting a business, they'll put a vision out there and be like, I want to do this type of company, but they don't know anyone who's ever done it before, don't have any idea to do it, and that'll be kind of the thing keeping them from even beginning to launch. But like for you, you were like, I'm going to start a shoe company. I don't know anybody who started a shoe company before, but you like put those steps, like you broke it down into step by step by step, every step of the way. Like
Yeah.
that's really awesome.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. So, what does 2023 and beyond look like for PerryCo Shoes?
Man, I'm starting to expand into different markets as far as the types of products that I want to provide.
Yeah.
So, I released my second sneaker silhouette this year called the Premier Runner. So
Yeah.
that's more of like like a runner type shoe, but it still has that look like the minimal, because you can kind of dress it up. So I'm staying on par with the brand.
Yeah.
However, I released varsity jackets with the sneakers. So
Okay.
the varsity jacket has my slogan on it, which is breaking barriers
I
for
love
obvious
that.
reasons.
Yes.
Um, and it has the California bear on it as well as the Chicago flag. So it's just kind of like talking about the transition
Wow.
from Chicago to Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to be more intentional with the types of products that I put out, and kind of creating a capsule, as you would say, like the
Yeah.
shoes, the socks, the varsity jacket, they all kind of go together in this capsule of like time to tell a story. So
That's
I'm releasing
amazing.
another colorway this month of that shoe. And I'm trying to get into more stores. So doing that, doing pop-ups as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm trying to get into, I'm thinking of doing like pop-ups in different cities as well.
Yep.
So yeah, just kind of spreading the word about the brand and maybe branching out to doing more speaking engagements for myself, just to get the word out there, but also inspire other,
Yeah.
people of color to get into footwear, but also into entrepreneurship as well too. So doing
Yeah.
more things out in the community. But I definitely want to do a lot more things for like kids and getting them involved
Yeah.
in design and things at a younger age. So like maybe middle school and high school age kids too. Because I've done that in the past. So I want to kind of pick back up on that again.
That's incredible. Side note, I pulled up the Premier Runners. These shoes are fire. Like these
So they
are
felt,
amazing.
I was like, I was kind of in my bag with it.
Yeah, for real. Like,
so they're cool, and it's kind of on trend too, because now everybody's kind of wearing New Balance, so it's kind of
yeah,
similar to that, but it's a little more lightweight. It looks
yeah,
like it would be heavy because of the sole, but the sole isn't. It's not rubber. It's an EVA sole, which is like more of an um,
yeah.
athletic sole that gives more flexibility. So it's definitely lightweight, and comfortable.
This
So
is This is incredible. Don't be surprised if you see an order from myself for a pair from me and my wife, matching pair, because
yeah,
these
y'all
are
can both
fire.
get the pair. Yep, that's
Yeah.
the
Okay, so a couple. I'll wait on those final two questions.
okay,
Um,
okay.
the first is, what's the coolest project you've been able to work on up until this time?
Ooh. I would say I did a project with John Dewey High School that's in New
Mhm.
York,
Yeah,
and they have a design program for high school kids that are interested in design, not necessarily footwear, but just design in general.
yeah,
And a man named Mike reached out to me, who is one of the co-founders of the organization, and he loved my story and the shoe. So he wanted me to talk to the kids and basically give them the opportunity to design a shoe.
yeah.
However, I was like, well, they can design my shoe, like the Prelude shoe. And so
That's
they basically
awesome.
had a contest within the class, and everybody had to create their own version of my shoe. And
Wow.
they voted on it, and they had a story behind why they made the design, the colorways, all that. And they voted on the top two. And it was these
Yeah,
two women that created the shoe. So it was a yellow sneaker and like a gray sneaker. It was like three different shades of gray, and the gray was like representing how they felt during the pandemic, how they felt like gray and like dark. I was like, man. And the yellow sneaker was when I can't remember the poet that spoke at when Biden was
oh, the young
president. I
black
can't.
lady.
Yeah, and she
Yeah,
wore like this bright
I blank on her
yellow.
name. Yeah,
Yeah, she wore this bright yellow jacket. I was like I was just shocked at like
that's
the
amazing.
creativity that a lot of these kids had, and like the stories that they had behind the designs.
Yeah,
So I got the shoes made for them so that they could, take home with them. But I also did like a pre-order so that anyone else that wanted to order a pair of the shoes could order
that's
them.
incredible.
And it was really fun. I think that experience for them, because I think a lot of kids participate in creating things, but they don't
Yep.
see them come to life,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yep.
think that's the different element, is like you actually having an idea, creating it, and then seeing
Yeah.
it come to life. It just puts perspective, like a different perspective on a lot of things for these kids that I don't think they would ever have the opportunity to experience. So I thought that was like super, super cool. And that's why I want to keep doing
Yeah.
more of that, because I was like, man, that was so fun, and I was just surprised just how creative all these young kids are too. So
That is super cool. And then, I'll ask this question, then I'll go into, I have three short, fun questions for you. But I'll ask this question. 10 years from now, what does PerryCo Shoes look like?
we the goat. We
Yeah, I love that.
no, I don't know. I've always thought about that, because I was like, man, because people were saying you should expand and do different things. I would definitely like to do some collaborations with different artists or
Yeah,
musicians, giving people the opportunity to design their own shoe from scratch
that's
and
awesome.
releasing it.
That's awesome.
So that maybe getting into the athletic space,
Yeah,
possibly. But for now, I'm gonna just focus on like lifestyle, casual shoes and apparel, and kind of doing more collaborations with like artists that can actually paint
yeah,
on shoes. But more so just being more out there, probably more in more retail stores. I'm not sure if I want to open my own store or not yet. That's something that I'm
that's
debating
awesome.
about.
Yeah,
But I just want to be, I can see myself being an internationally known brand. I
yeah,
really feel like, especially in like Europe and Japan, the style of the shoe really fits those markets a
yeah.
lot. So I think I'm definitely going to try to penetrate those markets a little bit more, and just pretty much put PerryCo on the map. like worldwide.
That's incredible. I love that. Okay, so I have three related questions, but fun questions for you. So the first,
Okay.
your former hooper, who is your favorite basketball player of all time?
Ooh, of all time?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a hard one. I don't have a favorite. I have like different ones that I like for different reasons. Can I do that? Can I do like my
Yeah.
top?
Yeah.
So Reggie Miller, obviously.
You're right.
Michael Jordan, Kobe. I have to throw some women players in there. I like Tamika Catchings.
100%.
Tamika Catchings from Indiana too. Cheryl Swoops, because she was the first person to have her own shoe.
Yeah.
As a woman. And then Dirk, because like I told you, he was tall. He was shooting jumpers before KD. So I feel like he's kind of underrated still. I feel like people still sleep on him as a GOAT.
Yeah.
Because he only got one ring. But I like them a lot. Those are my favorites.
All right, cool. So next question. Who is the greatest of all time basketball player?
Michael Jordan.
Okay, we won't debate that today, but
I don't want to hear
it's a podcast
LeBron.
About you, so we won't debate that today.
Yeah, I don't want to hear the LeBron. Yeah, I don't want it. I'm time today.
And then my final question, what is your favorite shoe of all time?
Mine.
It can be one of your I was just gonna say.
My shoe is my favorite. But outside of mine, I would say my favorite silhouette is the SB Blazer, like just a blazer shoe. Outside of Jordans, when I had like this transition in high school, like I was wearing Jordans all the time, but then I was like, everybody has the same shoes on every Monday. I switched to like SB Dunks and Blazers. So that's why it's like one of my favorite shoes, because then people were like, they saw I had these funky shoes, different colors, and they were like, "Where'd you get these?" And I would never tell like where I got my stuff. So that and it's such like it's kind of similar to mine. It's like you can kind of dress it up, dress it down. You can do so much with a blazer. And they're not hyped yet. They haven't hit the hype beast era yet. So they're kind of like, it's still my go-to. So that's my favorite shoe.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brittney. This was an incredible conversation. Super excited to continue to watch the growth of PerryCo Shoes. Your growth as an entrepreneur. You are an amazing inspiration, not just to the young women of color entrepreneurs, but to all entrepreneurs. I'm super inspired by our conversation today. I guess maybe I lied a little bit, but what my final question to you, where can people find you? Where can people get in touch? Where can people buy PerryCo Shoes? And I'll link all this down below as well.
Okay. No, you can find me at PerryCoShoes.com to buy the shoes. You can also buy them on Macy's.com. And you can find me on Instagram at PerryCo Shoes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brittney. This was an amazing conversation.
No, I appreciate it. I had fun talking to you. So I appreciate you having me on again. Thank you.
Of course.